Welcome to KinoSaito. I'm the gallery director here. My name is Michael Baracco, and welcome for joining us for this deep dive into Bel Falleiros, Navel-Knot Rise. I'm here with the artist herself and our curator, Jess Wilcox. And this is an exhibition that has been organized in collaboration with River Valley Arts Collective. So if you don't know that organization, they do amazing exhibitions all throughout the Hudson Valley. If you found us through them, welcome. But if you're one of our regulars, check out what they're doing because they do kind of amazing, important stuff all over. I think I'll do a brief introduction and pass it on to you. So we have to my left Bel Falleiros. She is a Brazilian artist whose practice focuses on place and belonging. She has worked to understand how contemporary constructed landscapes represent or misrepresent the diverse layers of presence that constitute a place and how this impacts its inhabitants. I'm not stepping on your toes, that might be better. Okay.
No.
And since arriving in the United States, she has produced public landworks at Pecos National Park, New Mexico, Burnside Farm, Detroit, and as part of the Monuments Now show at Socrates Sculpture Park. Recently, she's been featured in Under the Ashes at MAM Sao Paulo, the New York Latin American Art Triennial, and a solo exhibition at Wave Hill. And our curator today, Jess Wilcox, working with River Valley Arts Collective, is also an independent curator. And from 2016 to 2022, she was curator and director of exhibitions at the Socrates Sculpture Park. There she curated several group and solo exhibitions, including Virginia Overton, Built, Now Reward, Goat Again, and the Socrates annual exhibitions. She's also held positions at the Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum, the Met, MoMA, Performa, Abrams Art Center, and Sculpture Center. And welcome both of you, and we look forward to hearing it. I think I'm going to take a seat at this little beanbag right here.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, and it was really lovely to see that many of you were able to kind of experience the work, and particularly the sound piece beforehand, so that will give you a little touch of what we're going to be talking about, and then afterward, I hope we'll continue the conversation. But I thought to jump in, we start at the center and the beginning. Navel-Knot Rise. And, in reviewing your work from the past, 5-7 years, to put together this show, we were looking at or I noticed, and certainly you noticed and been talking about kind of several typologies. And the one that, came to the fore is this idea of the navel. Could you talk a little bit about where that kind of first came from? It probably comes from many different places, but in relationship to the works here, and the ones created with the Tiwa women.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Thank you, everybody, for being here and sharing your time with us. And thank you, everybody at KinoSaito, this amazing art space. And thank you, Jess. When Jess first invited me to do this show, I was like, I don't know if I can do it.
Oh, I knew she could do it.
I look at this video, I was like, wow. But it's been such an amazing experience. To have the chance to look at all this work together and connect things that I was saying, like a lot of these works were never shown before, so there is a lot of like really intimate pieces. So it feels really good to be here with you all and share more about it. The navel. It's funny, I was very self-conscious about this word at the beginning.
I remember.
Because it felt weird somehow. It didn't feel weird inside.
You used that word with the Socrates piece too, which was essentially a monument piece, and maybe we'll come to that later because I do want to start with the Tiwa Women United project. But yeah, it's this recurring thing throughout your work. So,
it was good to find a language because I think it was something that is started very naturally and instinctively, just as a way. I'm from São Paulo, which is a ginormous town, and I feel like it's very easy to disconnect from the landscape and the origins of place there. So my art practice started by trying to connect with that. So trying to put my body in relationship with the landscape there, and slowly I got to know more about some sites of the city on my back then walking practice, which I still do a lot. And slowly, yeah, I don't know if I go specifically to this description. Sometimes I worry that artist talk can be boring. Never. And I would also, like to invite you all to be part of the conversation. But yeah, the idea of the navel, I think it started from like this more internal, not research, but when you're trying to find something, you know, like it came from a very personal place, but then I started getting super nerdy about this notion of what is the center of a place, what is the origin of a place, why you have like a space, a piece of land, or like, I don't know, somewhere in nature, or now urban nature too, but that is why it turns into a place. So I was interested in that, and I started researching about origin places and mythologies, and I slowly learned about so many other places other than my hometown that shared also this idea of the navel, the center, the zero. So I started going other places to learn about other places, but then I found out more things about navels too. And New Mexico was a very important place for that. If I would jump to...
Well, I mean, in terms of the navel and this idea of the center of the world, you know, it's sort of, the fact that they're all over is kind of interesting. So, I mean, I hate to use the word universal, but it's present in more than one place. So it does feel sort of underlying and kind of human. I mean, using the word navel versus center, I think is also very, you know, humanist and an embodied way to think about place in this really human way. But I remember at part of the exhibition are these lovely texts and readings that Bel has chosen of various women, I think they're all women, who are sort of interlocutors, who she's been looking at and sort of in dialogue with in different ways. And one of them is Rena Wenzel, is that how you say her name? And, you know, this, I think your introduction to her comes out of this project of the Tiwa Women United, but she was writing about the sort of indigenous concept of sacred places and the center, and that you know, the center is always with the people in a way. You know, she kind of tongue-in-cheek said it's egocentric, but it's sort of a way of being present, and I think that was what was interesting to me, and thinking that you've been searching for these navels all over these different places, and then came to and was able to connect to this culture that already had a conception of place and sacredness that was sort of latently something you were exploring.
No, it was really powerful to encounter her writing, and also meeting some of her family members, because I used some of her texts in the ceramic pieces here. So when I met her family members, she had already passed, and I was kind of like asking permission for them to include her words. And it was,
And which one, so I think right, this vessel over here, what was to
The
balance,
A state of balance.
a state of balance between human and natural worlds, right?
And that one with the earth too has her sayings.
Her words
Yeah.
on it.
And also, one of the texts that is there
Mhm.
it's hers. But I feel like it's interesting you were saying, and I was thinking about like something I recently heard from a Brazilian indigenous leader. He was saying that how a group, an indigenous group that he knows, choose a place to live is the place they can dream.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people that live in close relationship with the land, or not close relationship, they know they're part of it. They don't
Mhm.
forget about that.
Mhm.
This idea of the navel, and that you are in the right place, and the place where you live is a sacred space.
Yeah.
And that you're
That the
part
sacred
of it.
space is not other, but it's
Yeah.
connected.
It's-
That's
and-
why the navel is
Yeah.
such a specific, beautiful form instead of just the center or the
Yeah.
origin.
And that's why it's okay to have multiple ones.
Yeah.
There is no like this is the most special place, the center of the world.
Mhm.
That like we like to think about a lot of the big cities, and
Yeah.
when you realize everything around you is sacred and important, and you are at the center of the world, I feel we can live in a more balanced way. And I think that's a lot of what I carried from her teachings, because she has a text also so beautiful that she talks about understate monuments. Like the monuments in her culture are very
Inconspicuous.
yes, and very. It's like the most common stone,
Right.
It's the navel of the world for
Mhm.
them. So yeah. Anyways, it's interesting because I don't know if that happens with you all too, but like you start working and trying to follow your, I don't know, inner being, let's say, and then you slowly encounter things that for me were big confirmations. So encountering, being in New Mexico was the first place I worked after moving to the US, and finding all of that was a huge confirmation.
Recognition.
Yeah, and almost like, okay, a permission to keep going and
Yeah.
researching deeper on that. And I was talking with Leticia, who was so important to this install. Leticia brought this book, and this is a book that just got published in Brazil that is called The Navel of the World. And it's like, I've never heard about it until it was published recently, but it talks about Brazilian mythologies about the navel of the world. So I feel like it's always, a lot of the times it comes afterwards that I encounter the things that confirm the journey somehow.
It's intuitive. And I think that's how this show kind of evolved. Seeing the navels in different places. But I would just, for the audience who might not know, could you just describe a little bit the project with the Tiwa Women United and those vessels that came out?
Yeah.
Because I think, because I also want to talk about the idea of the vessel.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So, I first went to New Mexico in 2016 for one of the national park art residencies. So I didn't meet anyone of the Tewa community. I just encountered Rina's text by chance, which are not very. It's not very available. It's not everywhere. But I was really interested. I have an architecture background, and I was really puzzled by this, not puzzled, but so interested in this architecture structure called the kiva, which is a rounded structure that is half into the earth and half in the sky, and it has an opening and a ladder that goes inside, and it's a ritual space. So I was like, oh my god, like this is so, I don't know. And inside the kiva there is a navel. So I was like interested in that. That's why I dove in and decided to research more. And later I had the chance to go back there and for an art residency in 2018, which the theme was equal justice, and there was it was right after I did a project in Detroit that is there. It's one of the little photographs there. But anyways, I mentioned that project because I did that project in a community garden in Detroit, and so I came back to New Mexico after that experience, and I was like, okay, maybe I can try to engage locally to do something in some kind of community garden or similar. And by chance, I found about this space called Healing Oasis Food Garden. I think this is the right. Which is led by Beata Totsipena, a wonderful, amazing person who is a Tewa woman working with environmental justice, birth justice, like anything related to indigenous women health. So she's fighting, at the same time, she's fighting Los Alamos, she's doing a community garden, she's doing like doula work, like she's doing all the things. So I arrived very like, I don't know, big, like I just did that one, and I told her about what I just did in Detroit, and I was like, I know you're a very busy woman, you know, like I don't want to be here, the art is full of ideas. Is there any way I can be useful, you know? I feel like sometimes the idea of art that is useful feels weird and judged. But anyways, I just felt I had to be there and learning. So we had amazing conversations, and I was there like inside. And at some point she was like, maybe we can work in this, using these ceramic vessels that can also use as irrigation. And I told her about Rina, how much I loved the text, and she also loved the text. And I was like, okay, I'm not like a ceramic artist, you know?
At that point you were.
Yeah. And her community have the most amazing ceramic artists. Like some of them are really famous. Like Rose B. Simpson is the granddaughter of Rina So, and she's at the Whitney Biennial, and she's doing so many things. And I was like, oh my God, like, are you sure?
Intimidated, right?
Yeah. And she was like, yes, you're here, and you're willing to do the work. And that's how it started. But we're friends, like it just started as an art residency, but then I went back, and we are still in touch. I feel I learned so much from her, and I still feel I have so much to learn.
Yeah.
More. Yeah, no.
But I also love this idea that the piece you made there was connected to the larger sort of ecosystem of what the community was doing in terms of, you know, gardening, and had all these sustainable practices that were not just, you know, the autonomous art world, of course.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously this idea of the ceramic irrigation. So there's like a real knowledge of the materiality there, and an understanding of the ceramic as coming from the earth and as a porous material with the water. Yeah. And then I just love how these ideas, and like that idea that came from this interaction then kind of ripples. This is our other motif out throughout the work. And you know, the idea, these concentric circles that you make in the pots. Yeah. And then we see them, of course, in the ripple series, and this idea of the ripple. And was that Rena Swensel's idea? Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's a good good point. Yeah, when we arrived in the space together, we looked at the windows, and very naturally we decided to put like the works that were more related to the naval concept, facing the mountains, and the works that are more related to this idea of the ripple that I'm just going to talk more about it, facing the water that is there, and almost like a little bit asking permission to be here, and at the same time inviting it in as part of the
and
show.
acknowledging that it's already here, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and the materiality of what you're using. I mean, is it too much to jump over to talking about the Haverstraw and
maybe,
the bricks?
Yeah, maybe I just mentioned like with the ripple, that painting I made in New Mexico while I was making the vessels for the garden. And this idea of the ripple came talking with also a friend who works with Tewa Women United, and they were talking about the ripple effect of our words, but everything we do, right? Like when you say something and you just back off and witness the effect of that. I think it's remembering that we have the navel, but this navel is rippling all the time as a person in the world, and both like, I don't know, for the good and for the bad. So
yeah, I know.
So yes, I think that, and maybe this is, I tend to be very like storytelling kind of person, telling the whole story behind the work, but I don't want to be speaking for too long.
No,
So
I
just
mean,
like
that's how we connect to things, is through stories, right?
Yeah.
That's how we understand the world.
Yeah. So I feel like this was one of the big learnings from New Mexico too. Like, it was really humbling and amazing to learn to back off a little bit as an artist, and be more of a listener rather than a talker. You know, like just be present. I was already trying to be more like that, and I feel it will be a forever journey of learning. But it was the first time I think the whole landscape around me was asking me that. So when I moved to New York, I was again a little bit like in São Paulo, so this ginormous city that is very loud, that nobody's listening to anybody, and then you really have to make time and space for like listening, breathing, quiet, darkness, like all those things you have to cultivate in a very intentional way.
Yeah.
Anyways, and then I didn't last much in New York. We lived there for what? I think 2 years after New Mexico, 1 year and a half, and then I moved up the river.
Near the water.
So this is at the shore, very close to where I live. And for me it was interesting because I really wanted to understand where I was landing and how I could be a participant of that environment rather than, I'm just here, you know. So I started learning more about this place, and it's a common story of all this area, right? A lot of the brickyards were everywhere here around the river, including right here. If you go downstairs, they have a little bit of the story of the brickyards in this specific area. So the river where I live, like the bottom of the river is full of bricks because it was, from all these brickyards, it was the biggest one. At some point it was making 800,000 bricks a day. And it's this tiny town. So they were extracting clay, crazy amounts of clay, and of course the people that were working in the brickyards were immigrant, black, I don't know, poor and were also being exploited like the land. And at some point, that part of the city collapsed. And it was where all the workers lived. So anyways, it's a work to remember that story that is not super well known. Actually, recently there was a New York Times article about it. Yeah, but it was just like a understate gesture of rearranging the bricks from the bottom of the river in this specific site where the city collapsed, and to honor the people, the clay, the river, and to remember that story as a reminder of the ripple effect of our gestures. Anyways, oh my God, I talked.
No. Well,
I said like I'm not gonna say much.
no, but I mean that of course is interesting to a piece that's not in here, which is the piece that we first worked on together, the Socrates piece, which was Bel made a work in a call for monuments in New York City. And this, both of them have this sort of navel shape, but both are sort of, in a way, you say inconspicuous, or they're anti-monumental in a way. But if you're looking back towards some of this idea of a sacred place or a landmark or a special place, a navel that is inconspicuous, is actually not a new idea, right?
Yeah.
Different indigenous communities are thinking about that.
Yeah.
And then like another text you have for everyone to explore on this sort of wall that is a glimpse into Bel's studio and the way, she thinks and works, and all these interlocutors. There's a text by Lucy Lepard, also someone who lives in New Mexico. So there's another navel coming in.
She was friends with Rena, actually. I found out about it later.
I think you could tell from reading the text that that she was really in dialogue with so many of these ideas.
Yeah.
But something that it was a text on, and I encourage you all to read it, on land art and the sort of classical conceived notion of land art that's typically, taught in schools that we associate with Michael Heiser, Robert Smithson, usually white male artists, and looking for an alternative kind of land art. And she was talking about language and all the different connotations, and she was talking about those are landworks of they're more like landscape, because it's about the distance and the wide view. And of course, this is when she's working on Lure of the Local and thinking about these smaller kind of micro communities or micro view of lands. And I feel like that's kind of what very much what you're doing. I mean, she's linking it to a feminist practice as well. But of course, I just think it's kind of beautiful that's one of the places, this kind of New Mexico. You have São Paulo. You have here the Hudson River Valley.
Yeah. Yes. No, I love that text from her. At the end, I just left a part of it that is on the right side, and it's printed on the wall. Yeah. But it's also a text that I found, it's not part of any of her books, but I liked because it was a bridge between two books that I really like from her. Like, one is called Overlay, that she dives into prehistorical art, and the other one is Lure of the Local, that she talks about place. But everything that she's saying, and I felt there was a lot of Rena's knowledge there, and then I found out that they were friends later. But what do I want to say about it? You were saying about the different
The different navels. I'm almost thinking about also the idea of, for me, I was thinking about the idea of navel in relationship to home.
Yeah.
Right? And, your home in Sao Paulo.
Oh, yeah.
And then your home here, too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that's I'm looking at time,
Yeah.
a way to think about, connecting the navel of Haverstraw to, then we have these navels here.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great bridge, because I feel this space where we are is like a home. It has a very strong, welcoming, generous, hug way of being. Thanks to everybody that works here. Thanks to Mikiko's vision and persistence to make this space to exist, and Michael, we were talking about how smooth was the installation process, and I think it's because of your generosity too, and how there was a lot of listening and generosity, which we felt so nice, such a great experience. And the works on the center, we were thinking a lot. I think it's somehow related to this place, specifically, how to land in a home, right? And somehow as permission and honor again, but also connect to the space. So it was when we started the conversation. Jess was like, "Here, you did so many things in the recently, but they were all site specific, and this is the first time it's a more survey, yeah. And I feel this is the more site specific moment of the show, because it relates to the space. So this was decided just by being here with time, and having the time to. There was not an idea before arriving, right? And even the way we decided to place these two artworks, it was very much in response to the space.
And I also think the way that the space works, I mean, little things, just, the fact that the benches here were, or is it maybe just one bench was made from the cross that was on the church? And so thinking about, I loved that moment because it was you guys were looking at the materiality of your place, what was already here. And of course that immediately made me think of wood, and wood is one of our 3 materials at River Valley Art Collective. And so evoking wood, you're actually doing it with textiles, right? But these have these kind of tree-like forms. And these, both of these were made beforehand. So there was a moment coming in where I loved what you guys had done with the space, the way you were so attentive, and what you left and what you preserved. And I loved the wooden beams. And I knew Belle had this piece that she hung. And I was like, oh, we gotta hang a piece. And she'd never presented, you presented it in Brazil. But not in her home here. And I also like the idea of connecting your 2 homes. So do you want to talk a little bit about the original piece?
This is actually we traveled with this in our luggage all the way from Brazil. But this is actually the first time these 2 pieces are together, and they were made at the same time. They're very different, but they both have the diameter of the biggest Brazil wood tree that is alive. And Brazil wood is a very slow growth tree that was a colonial good. So when Portuguese first arrived in Brazil, they didn't find gold like in other colonies, so they decided to extract Brazil wood because it had this red pigment, which is the paints are made of, the paintings are made of. And this tree almost went completely extinct, and in Brazil it's we are named after it because of it was a product. And we are called brasileiros, brasileiro was the person who would cut the tree, and this is what we are named after. So it's like, I know it. It's like it's a charged. There is history. A lot of in my work that it comes from a place of rage sometimes, but it's like how to elaborate that violence and trying to see the other layers of story that are there. So in this one, this was commissioned for a biennial in São Paulo, and my intention, well, there are many things I could talk about it, but I think in the painting, the idea was to honor all the trees that were cut during this process, and honor their aliveness, so their vibrancy. So going from the navel to the ripple, so thinking about the vibrancy, the pulse that we all carry with us, and to honor that even on the things that are not here anymore. And I wanted the piece to be open so everybody could enter and be part of it somehow. Like when I was making the work, my grandma, who's a biologist, she was telling me, the very center of the tree is the alive part, and everything around is just protecting this aliveness. So the bark is just protecting the life inside. So I wanted every person to, well, this is like, artists want a lot of things, but the idea behind was like, so if when you enter, you feel part of that aliveness, and you see the aliveness inside of you. And with this, because this was for a biennial, it was very I felt I was very controlled painting, and I have to follow the draft that I said, With this one, it was like, okay, I was telling Nina that I spent a whole month painting this one, but this one I painted in less than a week after this. And I felt I committed to listen to the tree rather than me forcing into the material, because I spent so much time with this, touching this tree. I was like, I'm gonna do a painting that is I'm just not thinking. I'm just letting I'm more like a vehicle. I'm more listening. I don't want to sound pretentious. It was just really to spend time with the material. And then this came after that too. I could share more about it, but this is how they came about, yeah. And if you can go inside, so the inside, it's brighter than the outside. Brazil wood is a pigment that is very sensitive to light, so the color is changing all the time. So inside is brighter than the outside, and after KinoSaito, who knows which side is going to be more bright. It's changing all the time. Yeah. The little paintings there is also Brazil wood, the ones on the left that are tiny. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's back to this idea of the living inside. There's something about the works that really invites you in. And, I think in combination with the other works, what I love is your change in scale, sort of, this is the diameter of the largest Brazil tree wood, but you have these kind of alternating scales, and you can imagine sort of the concentric circles inside, which of course are seasons of growth, which are fueled by water, capillary action going up and down, building these layers of bark, which to me is just like the animated version of the ripple. It's like a ripple in biologic material. Yeah. And I guess kind of coming off of what you said about people and the way that KinoSaito works, I was just thinking of, I guess, the third interlocutor in this series, which is Robin Wall-Kimmerer, and her text, Service Berry, which is about gift economy, and this idea of coming from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, and looking towards different, often indigenous kind of systems of gift economy, And she had this line about how we think ripples how we behave, which I think sort of embodies so much of this process and how these works fit together, and how we were able to work here at KinoSaito.
Yeah.
So.
No, there is something, beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is something about remembering our interdependence, right? We all need each other. Like the trees know they need each other, so they nurture each other. And while you were talking about the tree, I was thinking like there's something about the root that like the travel of the water from under the earth to the sky with the clouds that is all like part of the cycle of a tree, and just by looking at that, how much we can learn, right? And remember that we are that too.
And that's another thing I love about Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who is a botanist. But this serviceberry essay, she's also talking about economy and thinking about this scientific view that I think is a lot of scientists are bringing up in the face of climate change is spinning it around like what technologies, what can we learn from plants, what can we learn from nature, and think about that as solutions, which I really love, and that this gift economy is actually already within the ecosystem, and that we should be looking there for solutions, not like, I don't know, equations. The answers are around us.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's just making the effort to be present and listen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we want to maybe open it up for questions. If anybody has, an artwork that they, a navel that they connect with, a ripple that they see among the works, among stories to share, or just normal questions. For normal questions. Yep.
I'm sorry I missed the beginning part of this. I'm so glad I got part of it. I was so moved and compelled when I first saw this exhibit. So maybe this is my third visit here. So I've been in this piece in different lights with different people. I've been moved and have actually photographed a number of these pieces just because that whole coming in here, I felt so connected to this piece on so many levels. The idea of bark and pigment and the connection that happens underneath the ground between trees that talk to each other, that like the whole ethernet of like mushrooms, like we're all like, so you brought like so much of that for me just in even these pieces. I could like go on about a lot of them because they have all touched me in a really deep way, and then just even watching this ripple into what you've done with the brick. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing. And coming.
And whoever recorded this, I would love to listen to the earlier part. I'm sorry, I got that. You're right.
Thank you.
Maybe a comment versus question, or question in progress, but you almost in passing mentioned rage, and I wanted to go back to that and think about I think the idea of using rage to heal from violence is really powerful, and I just wanted to hear more of your thoughts about that and how you use rage as a creative tool.
Yeah, I think a lot of my works is started from a discomfort since architecture school, when I was mentioning that I decided to start walking to connect my body with place. It came from rage of like architects being so let's say, I'm one of them somehow, but being so arrogant and project, like designing places instead of relating. Of course, good architects could work differently, but instead of designing with the place, with the materials of the place, with the stories of the place, it's usually coming from like a bird view and like a floor plan and like everything is from above. So that is an example of when rage it started something on me. I feel like we live in a world that is already super harsh to keep going and remembering we have to take deep breaths and we have to remember every person is sacred and important, everything is like important and we need to take care of each other. So I really try to process my rage because I think we don't need any more rage in the world. So it comes, like, I think that's why I just said really briefly, but because I don't want that feeling to be present necessarily in what comes out, because I feel people don't need any more of that somehow. You know, like we can talk about it. It can be present in another way, but I kind of feel we need to know about the stories, but we don't need to have the yuckiness of them like in us, you know. So it's an exercise. Yeah.
I just have an observation. I'm looking out this window, and it's quite interesting. The color you have used is the color which grows out of the maple tree right now. So the relationship between Brazilian trees and the trees here is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like natural pigments, they change so much, not just over time, but like depending how the light hits, the color changes. And it's a very good, I don't know, it's so rich to work with natural materials. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also going to ask a question about pigment and how you work with it from the tree.
Yeah.
Is it one color?
Yeah.
And basically, depending on how much you use, how much soaks into the material?
Yeah.
Or is it, do you mix it at all
Yeah.
to come up with different colors, different shades?
Yeah. So yeah, for this project, because Brazil wood is such, like I was saying, like untouchable, basically tree. I was really worried about like how to work with the plant in a respectful way. So I worked in partnership with this person who works with clothing, but with natural, everything that she uses making clothes is very, how do you say it? She knows every single person from the person who cultivated the cotton to
The whole
like the
supply
yeah.
chain.
And the way she works is supporting every step of the chain. So with the Brazil wood, the only people that are allowed to use the tree are this group that makes violin bows, because Brazil wood is a very specific tree that is a hardwood but also flexible. So they already made those bows, and the sawdust that is the residue of their production is what we used to make those paints. So with her team, we experimented and made a lot of different paints. In this piece, I used more of everything that we experimented and created. If you just boil the bark, it's a very interesting and kind of magic. If you have warm water and you throw the sawdust, it starts with this like kind of orangey color, and it slowly turns into magenta, and it changes all the time. Like it's.
Oh, we should have done a.
She did. The first time I was there, she did that and showed to me, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, I know nothing." Yeah, so we experiment because it's very sensitive to pH. The paint, anything that touches the paint changes the color of the paint. So we make some experiments. So everything that is more orangey is more just the bark boiled, and the darker it goes, it has more things added to it. And one of the things that I used is this salt thing that makes the pigment stays longer in the fabric, because the fabrics are so big. I didn't have. It's impossible to prepare the fabric before painting. If you're doing something smaller, you can. So I couldn't just use just the bark. So yeah, and with this I got very free, and I was even taking like a clump of this salt and rubbing, and I was rubbing the sawdust. So I was experimenting a lot, and with this too.
And does this one have, some of these have other natural pigments, right?
These also have a tree from the US. I felt it was important. Butternut tree.
Butternut.
So it's also a bark that you boil. It's the same, and it's also a slow growth tree. And talking about the rage effect, it's the pigment that was used to dye the Confederate uniform. So, anyways, I feel I'm just scratching the surface.
Just scratching the surface of the butternut
of your. This is starting
the
to
other.
To know.
Right. Yeah, entangling these homes in colonial histories.
Yeah. But also trying to remember what was there before, and what can we have after. How to heal together. Somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that coming back to the title and the second half of the title, and I think it, starting with the navel, but then the root rise, I feel like, I loved your title because I think it is kind of forward-looking and looking towards growth. It has a suggestion towards growth and a future, and sort of continuation of life.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I feel like that's where this comes in.
Yeah.
More of an observation response to, but it's so strong to me to think about the way that the liquid by moving through the work. Sap of the tree is so strong in the violence and also the nourishment. And so it's making me think about the placenta so much. But also the way this piece is interacting with the ground. I mean, it's incredibly moving to see the connection between beadworks and so your ceramic pieces and then the brick, which also comes back to violence and the circular formats as well as these kind of like more stringy growths. I don't know, I just sort of like spinning around in all these elements and how they come together. How you are combining it in this very sort of distilled phase. So I don't know if there's something that you
Yeah, I was gonna say, were you working on any of these pieces when you were pregnant? I'm trying to think.
Too.
Was it Red as Brazil?
No, it was right after I got pregnant. This one, yeah. I never really thought about being a mother.
So the rage.
I never thought about it, but anyways, I opened up myself for that at some point. And yes, the force of life, it comes really strong. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I painted this when Cecilia, the little baby, was just born. A lot of these paintings were made like holding her. Actually, I needed something light and flexible, and that I could be moving everywhere all
Well,
the
that's
time.
really interesting also to think about how the body informs the artwork you can make and you're willing to make, and the pliability of the body, the flexibility of the body, because it's true, it's something we don't think about.
Yeah.
But the porosity also, the way that the water can move through the ceramic and into the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and how the center has that function.
Mm-hmm.
And also then the tree sap, there's this like
Yeah.
very, very strong connection.
Yeah.
Even how the bricks are holding the water.
Yeah.
Using it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the umbilical.
Yeah.
It's umbilical.
Yes.
You know, so
Yeah.
It all makes sense, Emily.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like one of the one text that is there too. It talks about darkness, and it talks about. It's from this indigenous cinematographer from Brazil doing, and also educator, amazing person. I worked with his partner when I first did some related to this piece in Brazil after I did this. But he's talking about darkness as this place of the possibility of things to start or emerge, and life can. We need the darkness so light and life can exist. And how in our culture recently we let the day enters the night. So we use light and we work through the night, and how we don't make space for darkness and for the night anymore. Anyways, it's like a reminder of what are we missing. So the space of dreams, the spaces of silence, and anyway.
Places for seeds to germinate, roots to grow.
Yeah, respect the end of cycles, and like letting things to die, and including ourselves, right? So making peace with those cycles. And then after thinking about that text and using it and making pots that somehow are related to that, someone also mentioned like the womb as this dark, fertile place. These are all things I never thought about, but yeah, it made me think of that text when you started talking. Yeah.
Well, for me, it's lovely. This has been a lovely opportunity to see these different bodies of work together, because, as you mentioned, a lot of these were kind of single project based, and I think these connections that were there, and kind of latent in what other people were thinking in sacred architecture and amazing thinkers. They kind of come to the fore when put in the same room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thank you.
so thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you both so much. Just a very special moment. And I also want to thank Navel Arts Collective for working with you two and putting this all together. Such an amazing experience. And I think, the little thoughts that Soli had and the moments that she had were very emblematic of how people experience this exhibition.
Yeah.
Often people come into the office with their hand over their chest and these wide eyes, and they know they're going to talk about this show. So thank you both.
Yeah.
And if people are interested, next month we're going to do another artist talk featuring Alina Tenser's show downstairs. So if you want more interesting conversation, sign up for that.
And I know some other people had questions, and we just didn't want to take the time of everybody. But if we're gonna be here.
You can feel free to continue the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
To our future.
Yes.